closed session, and to be honest with you, this is one I've been looking forward for a while. We always like to know what's happening in the legislature in the province of Alberta. And with us right now is the man in charge of the largest constituency land-wise in the province of Alberta, Dan Williams. First off, Dan, thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much, Kenny. Couldn't be happier.
Now, I got to just say, how much mileage do you put on your truck having a tour this riding? It is the biggest geographical riding in Alberta.
Yes, I believe it's 16.5% of the land mass of Alberta. It's about the same size as the island of Newfoundland, which for the record has something like 38 different MLAs. So
wow.
I got a lot of territory just for myself. But it's pretty fulfilling work. I put on about 80,000 kilometers this year. So that's about what I put on, maybe a little bit under that. So
I can imagine the carbon tax isn't helping too much.
Well, yeah, no, it was good for a while. We got rid of that. So, with it, there's ups and downs, and we're going to keep fighting to make sure that we're representing the interests of the North. And as you know, carbon taxes punish rural northern citizens more than anyone else in the country.
Right.
Bay Street bankers down in Toronto, they're going to keep on walking to and from their condo to work, whereas the rest of us are going to get in our trucks and our cars, and we're going to go to our resource extraction jobs or jobs that depend on that happening in Alberta, and we're going to use carbon to develop our resources in a responsible way. So punishing us for that seems like the backwards way to look at it.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And considering that anybody who lives in a rural place, whether it's rural Ontario, rural Saskatchewan, rural Alberta, you do have to drive. That's just kind of the reality of it. But now, looking ahead to the future, I know next week, coming up February 18th, you and your colleague Todd Lowen are going to be hosting a fair deal panel. Now,
right.
The one thing I want to talk about is that this is really what the people want to see in a fair deal for Confederation. How important is it that as many people as come out to talk about their impressions of a fair deal?
First off, Kenny, a fair deal is the most important thing that this government can do for its citizens.
Right.
It has been the case that Alberta is happy to support our brothers and sisters in Confederation when times are bad there and good here, but in recent times, it's been the other way around. It's been really hard. We can look at Peace River with Shell pulling out and Carmen Creek shutting down. Something like 46 different businesses over the past 5 years have closed down or left the Peace River region. This is devastating to our community. And when we're looking at what we need for a fair deal, the number one thing we need is that pipeline. Without pipelines, we end up in a spot where, as oil prices fluctuate up and down in West Texas Intermediate and international markets, we still end up just paying that same pressure because the United States will just buy that oil at the price that they want because that's what the market dictates. So until we get international access to markets with pipelines, we're always going to be selling our oil at billions of dollars of a discount. And this is ultimately the provincial citizens' resource. This is not just the government. This is every citizen in the province that resource belongs to. So when we get a discount of billions of dollars for our oil, it's hurting every citizen because it belongs to all of us.
And no doubt about it. So for the Fair Deal panel, 7 o'clock, Peace Valley Inn's on Tuesday.
That's
and
right.
in talking about that, like I know that they talk about the format. What do you know about the format? So what can people expect when they come in?
Well, members of the Fair Deal panel, there's 3 members of caucus that'll be there, including Tanny Yao from the northeast and the Fort McMurray area, Drew Barnes down from the southeast of Alberta, and Miranda Rosen from the outside Calgary, Banff, Canmore area, along with a number of other preeminent Albertans, and they're going to be there at the panel. And the idea is really listening exercise. We need to know how you guys feel about the idea of a provincial pension plan, the idea of a provincial police force, the idea of making sure that we fight for equalization through maybe a referendum.
Yep.
There's a number of different things we put out there, but we're mostly there to listen to the ideas we haven't heard yet. Because Alberta has got ingenuity coming out of its ears. We have people who know how to make a situation work, especially up here in the north. There's a pioneering spirit. So let's take that pioneering spirit, that entrepreneurial attitude that we have, let's apply it to the fair deal. Let's say, what do we need and how do we get it? We want your ideas. We want you to come out. We want to hear from you. Because this is the most important thing that I'm dealing with right now, is a federal government that in some ways we hope will cooperate, but historically, over the last 4 years that they were in, have not been. So we need to make sure we put our foot down and say, just like Lougheed did, this is Alberta. We demand to be listened to in the country for a fair deal. We're not asking for something special, just what we're owed.
Well, it worked for Quebec. It worked for Quebec, and you never know if it could work for Alberta. Now, I know that this one had came in, and I did mention to our people or listeners that, you know what, Dan Williams going to be coming here. Do you have any questions? And one of the questions was about the insurance cap expiring, and the question along the lines is that why let the insurance cap expire, and what is the long-term plan to tackle auto insurance? Because a lot of people do feel that the rates are high.
Yeah, no, and I hear you're coming from. This was a plan set up by the NDP for it to expire in August 2019. Now, everyone on the board was appointed or renewed by the previous NDP government. We're currently looking in the coming months, so stay tuned for the details. We're going to tackle the issue that they didn't tackle and just prolonged. We're going to make sure that the system is working for Albertans. So in the coming months, we will be seeing the details roll out from finance.
Okay, so fair to say that so that's kind of a stay tuned.
That's what it is right
Fair.
now, and I'm happy to come back and chat with you with those details when they're ready to be shared.
All right, great. That's I know that was an important question to some of our listeners, and I know that this is something that you've really been focused on. As I've even called people, this is your bread and butter, and that's Bill 207.
That's
now,
right.
Just for those who aren't familiar with it, I mean, looking over the bill just kind of reminds you freedom of religion, freedom of expression. So it seems to really mirror a lot of what's on the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms.
That's right. So Bill 207 was a private member's bill I brought forward. The intention of the bill was to make sure that folks who have deeply held convictions working in healthcare professions are not forced to choose between those deeply held convictions and their jobs. Right? And this is something that isn't new. This isn't novel to Alberta or to Canada. In fact, it's the very first freedom enumerated in the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, the right to conscience. And so that's section 2 of the charter. And basically, this was a way to make sure that we're respecting those rights. This was not intended to in any way limit access to any services. In fact, what it's meant to do is make sure that these healthcare professionals, as we live in a diverse society with their diverse views, feel comfortable practicing across Alberta. And that's in Alberta. That's a Canadian value. The idea that no matter where you come from or who you are, you're welcome to practice here. You're welcome to live your life here as you see fit within the bounds of the law. So that's the intention of 207. And as we see with the federal government and Trudeau speaking with a lot of rhetoric about expanding euthanasia, this is something that a lot of Albertans, a lot of Canadians have different views on. And if this expansion is going to happen, if we're going to see a change in the law to make it even more broad, where euthanasia is going to be accessible to people who aren't necessarily terminal, to people who are potentially under the age of 18, people who might have temporary issues like depression and other issues that we should be trying to treat and deal with seriously, if that's going to continue on, one of the things we absolutely must do is consider, how do we fit in a diverse society? How do we fit in and allow people with different views to continue practicing their vocation, their job?
Okay, and I know the legislature does resume later this month.
That's right.
So in this sitting of the legislature, will Bill 207 be back on the table in this session?
So the way that it works is any bill that was on the order paper when the House was prorogued before a throne speech is lifted off the order paper. Right. So the bill itself, in the form of 207, cannot continue on because of the procedures that happened. And I always knew going into this that was something that could happen. It was a question of timing. So the question is, will there be a future private member's bill that allows that? That's something that I would like to happen at some point. I don't have a private member's bill in this coming year. If any of my colleagues in the coming years do, or if I get one, it's something I take a lot of interest in.
Okay, that's very interesting to know. Now, I know for one of the things is that I had a chance at Peace River Council, and I know that they got denied on a few funds under the ICIF plan, which
That's
is,
right.
I believe, dollars are funneled through the federal government to Infrastructure Alberta, and then dispersed that way. Now, I can understand that for council, there's some critical frustration. There are some critical infrastructure that needs to be done, and I know that they're kind of feeling like they maybe got left out on that. Now, I saw the letter from Shannon Flint, Deputy Minister, that it's explained that there were over 700 applications, and I know we saw last week you had a great announcement in Manning, and I'm sure that's one of the finer points of the job, but sometimes I guess one of the tougher ones is sometimes having to tell municipal colleagues learning that sometimes this happens. So is there anything you can do in your position as MLA to try to say, what can we do to get these infrastructure projects going?
Absolutely, and the town of Peace River knows directly after my election, within weeks, I was working with them to make sure that we found dollars that were badly needed for important infrastructure in the water system here in the town. So they know that I work with them every chance that I get. And they also understand that within my riding, we had somewhere around over 30, perhaps it was 40 different applicants from across my constituency. 2 were awarded to First Nation communities in the north, the Dene and Beaver. But that being said, it is not necessarily easy to get there because we had Lacrete, we had Fort Vermilion, we had High Level, we had Manning, amongst others, all who applied for different aspects for this funding, including Peace River. And the bottom line is that we only have so many dollars in the account, and we try and spread them out around as efficiently and as fairly as we can. So I would ask the town to be thoughtful in its approach to this and try to continue to work with me and the provincial government where and when they can, because I hope they understand that every chance I get to advocate for the town of Peace River, I do, but we have a very large constituency, the largest in the province.
Yes.
It's very diverse with lots of different needs, and because we're so big, that infrastructure, as they know, is costly and it's difficult to employ. So I tell them, just like I tell everyone else, this province is going to balance its budget as it's promised. And that's important because we're currently paying somewhere around $2.1 billion in interest rate payments. Those are tax dollars that only go towards bondholders and bankers and do not go towards building roads, ICF funds, hiring teachers, or any of the important services that we provide as a provincial government because of that debt. We are decided as a provincial government, because of the mandate we received, which was a record mandate, the largest number of votes ever received by any provincial party in our history, to make sure that we run this province in a way that is becoming of its citizens. That means not wasting dollars. That means being thoughtful about balancing the budget. And we're doing that. As we saw in our first budget, we had a cost reduction of about 2.8%, which is, about 3 cents on the dollar when you think about that. That's the equivalent to not taking the chocolate bar in the grocery line on the way out, right? Everyone's going to have to find ways of being thoughtful about tightening their belt. That includes us provincially. We're doing that because that's what voters expect of us.
All right, and speaking of that, we're talking about the budgets. I know February 28th, Finance Minister Travis Taves, neighboring MLA as well, is going to be releasing his budget. And obviously, I guess if you even heard anything, I know you can't talk about it, but in saying that, though, there's some things in this budget that the people in the Peace River constituency are going to be excited about.
Yeah, there's going to be lots of different things. We're continuing to fund our province, and you can get a good idea of what we're looking at for the 4 years if you look at our business plan that was released in the previous budget last October. So it's something that we are going to continue to do, is fund as best we can. We just had a good announcement, as you alluded to earlier, in Manning for long-term continuing care there. So where we can, we'll do that. But the biggest thing the residents of Peace River should be looking forward to is we're working towards a balanced budget. We're spending within our means. We're living as a province in a way that most folks live in their day-to-day lives, where their household budgets, they know they cannot run debts indefinitely, and they have to be thoughtful and make sure that the way that they spend money in some way equates to the way that they earn it. And that's what we're doing as a province, and that's what I'm looking forward to.
All right, and I guess the fun question, I know we touched on it last week, but I always like to have this one on closed session. Lacrete, Hockeyville, your hometown.
Yes.
And I know for them that they were wanting to talk about the Lacrete Lumberjacks. They want a second ice surface out there. And I guess also as not only a Lacrete boy, but as a hockey fan yourself, how excited are you that they're in on this? And they even got endorsements from High Level as well.
No, I couldn't be happier. Like I said last time, every Saturday night, if you got nothing to do in town, you head over to the arena. You're going to see the Lumberjacks playing someone. And it's always a good time. The whole town's out. It's just the way it is in every town. Manning, Grimshaw, Peace River, High Level, everywhere's the same way. We love hockey up here in the north, and I think there's no better community that I can think of this year than Lacrete to get that award. So I couldn't be happier.
Okay, and the last one. I know we may be getting a little premature here, but I always like to ask a very interesting question, and this is one advice about your future. Is that, and I've always asked this, you are a rookie MLA. Obviously too soon to think about it. Now, obviously I'm not questioning Premier Kenny's leadership, but is that something maybe one day down the road, 20, 30 years, that you would consider, would you ever see yourself as the Premier of this province one day?
No, I could not be happier to represent the people in the Peace River constituency. I desire nothing more than that. And if someday in the future there's other roles for me, whatever that is, in government or out, I'm happy to do that when the time calls. But right now, I'm happy to be representing the folks at Peace River. It's the most fulfilling job I've ever had. I couldn't dream of something better.
Well, I did say there's that one, and the reason I asked it is because one listener did ask, that I said, hey, Kenny, do you think you'd ever consider being the party leader one day? And I'm like, wow, what a great question to ask him. So, Dan, on that note, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much. Happy to come back.
Absolutely. This is our MLA, Peace River MLA, Dan Williams, and this has been another edition of Closed Session.